Hey, it's Mr. Make Muscle Not Excuses. I was just filming my Sunday workout so I could break up segments and show it during the week, different home exercises you could try. And because I'm filming, I'm running back to the camera and doing some stuff, and I get a little bit out of rhythm, and I noticed by halfway through the workout that I was getting really out of breath, which reminded me, I was talking this week to a client on virtual training. In other words, they're at home and I'm watching them work out and putting them through their paces. One of the drawbacks to that is the sound. If I'm yapping or coaching, like, give me more, keep going, I can't hear their breathing. And so we ended up dealing with this person's breathing technique and discussing breathing in general. And he said to me that it's probably a good idea to put that information into our blog because it's valuable stuff that's useful and useful in many different ways, and especially when you're training at home right now in social isolation and lockdown. You need to be aware of these types of things. So anyway, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, let me try to cover it very simply. Breathing is used during exercise to stabilize your midsection, what people commonly call a core. Although core is not really a physiological term, it was just a term that Reebok, the marketing department at Reebok, came up with, but we'll go with it. So breathing out hard during exercise helps stabilize your midsection by creating interthoracic pressure. It's the same kind of pressure that you're trying to create when you go to lift something heavy and you hold your breath, except during strength training or any very vigorous exercise, you don't want to hold your breath because eventually that's going to catch up with you and your muscles are going to run out of oxygen. So instead, what we do is we breathe out hard, and it gives you the same kind of stabilization, plus it reminds you to dump your carbon dioxide. So breathing in is very easy. You're almost sucking in to a vacuum. If you pass out on the floor, you'll keep inhaling. In fact, it's much easier to hyperventilate, to get too much oxygen in and not get enough carbon dioxide out than it is to not get in enough air. So you have to focus always on breathing out. And one thing that came up in the discussion is a lot of people tend to think about breathing in as being the helpful thing. So if they're lifting weight, or if they're doing a push-up out, or they're lifting weight up or curling up or lifting up, like they're going through the hard part of an exercise, they tend to breathe in because they think of it as helpful, getting oxygen in. But actually, to create that pressure inside your core, you need to be breathing out. You should be breathing in because it's easy during the easy part of an exercise, and you should be breathing out during the hard part of an exercise. What's the easy part and what's the hard part? Always just think of it as, in most cases, basically when you're lifting the weight, that's the hard part, and then when you're letting your muscles stretch and you're putting down the weight, that's the easy part. Because you're 40% stronger when your muscles are stretching. So when you're coming down in a push-up, or after you've already done a row, when you're coming down in the row, or when you're coming down in the squat, that's the easy part. When your muscles are elongating, they're stretching, they're 40% stronger. So that's when you inhale. So if it was a curl, you would inhale as you lowered the weight, and then exhale as you lifted the weight. As your muscles shorten, that's their weakest phase. It's called the concentric phase or positive phase. So that's when you want to exhale. So if you're lifting weight up overhead, you want to inhale during the easy part and exhale hard during the hard part. Same with the push-up. You inhale and you exhale. And always just focus on the exhaling. Don't even think about the inhaling. You'll just naturally inhale air because you need it. Just focus on when should I exhale. And you exhale when your muscles shorten, you inhale when they elongate. Now, a little more in depth to that is an even more important reason than just basic breathing technique when you're exercising is to know that your heart is innervated by two different nerve systems. One, your sympathetic, and one, your parasympathetic. And these are basically autonomic. You don't really give them any thought. But your sympathetic is responsible for increasing your heart rate, and your parasympathetic is responsible for controlling and down-regulating your heart rate. And these are very closely linked to your breathing. The more you breathe, the more oxygen you put in your system, the more your heart needs to pound to move it around. There's a very close link there. And these autonomic systems, you can develop control over them. All high-level athletes do. Just think of your blinking. I mean, you blink all day and you don't put any thought into it whatsoever, but if you wanted to exert control over it, you could hold your blinking. And even when something's coming at your face, like you learn in boxing and that sort of thing, you could learn not to blink. So you can gain control over your heart rate. And one of the best ways to do this that I found was something I learned a long time ago. It's just a simple exercise where you're using breathing and a little bit of visualization. I would recommend just trying to do it for a few minutes once a day and get in the habit of doing it every day, say right before you go to bed. It's really good for decreasing your stress levels and reducing, getting that parasympathetic calming heart rate thing going before you go to sleep. So that's a good time to practice it. Now you will want to be sitting upright, and all you're doing is you're picturing in your mind a string, just a little thin string about 12 inches long, floating in front of your nose or your mouth. At first I would practice using your mouth. As you get better, after a week or two of doing it for a few minutes every night, you can use your nose, but at first just use your mouth until you develop some control. So you just picture the string out here, and you want to inhale it very slowly. You're inhaling it very slowly, picturing it going in and down your throat, past your esophagus, right down into your stomach, and then rotating counterclockwise once, twice, and 3 times. Now you're trying to do this, and this is why you have to visualize, without the string wiggling so much that it touches the inside of you. So your breathing is not speeding up or slowing down, it's just now at first, you're gonna take in way too much air and you're barely gonna get it down into your stomach. But with practice, you're gonna slow down and only take in a tiny little bit of air at a time and create that string movement right down inside you, around counterclockwise 3 times, and then you begin to exhale. And you don't speed up, you just keep an even, very slow exhale as you picture the string going clockwise around in your stomach 3 times, without touching the walls of the stomach, coming up the esophagus without wiggling and touching the walls, and coming back out in front of you. And all you do when you visualize it is you start and finish by picturing your breath, listening to your breath and feeling your breath relative to the imagination of a string, and you can hear in your breath and feel if it would be wiggling really hard. So you want to be, I don't know if you can really hear that or not, maybe if I get kind of close. Just a very slow, even, steady breathing. At first it'll seem really, really awkward, and then it'll become more and more natural. Now, what this does is it builds diaphragm strength and diaphragm control so that you can exhale very, very hard. And that control that you develop is something you can call on when your heart starts to race, which is very useful. It's useful during exercise. It's useful during sports and activities when your heart starts to really race, like when you're running up a hill or swimming really hard or climbing something or lifting something heavy. Your heart starts to race. You control your breath so that you don't bring in more oxygen than you can dump the carbon dioxide. There needs to be a balance there so that you don't end up breathing shallow. If you keep bringing in too much air and you don't get out the carbon dioxide, you end up backed up. So you need to have that balance. And this control that you develop is great for that. And it's great for when you're under stress of any type. If you're angry or you're stressed out and anxious, this control of breathing in and out steadily, not speeding up, not slowing down, and being able to choose the amount of air you bring in and let out. It shouldn't just be involuntarily. You shouldn't just be going around in your life just gulping in air because you feel suddenly that you need it and then forgetting to exhale. You will notice you feel more in control and more athletic developing breath control. So that's about all I can say. If you really want to get into power breathing and that sort of thing for sports and for exercise, a simple thing that I've practiced is just putting a candle on the table in front of you, and you take in a good breath and you blow it out, and you practice moving the candle farther and farther away and seeing how far you can get the candle and still blow it out. And that helps you develop the ability to use your diaphragm properly, just like you use your muscles properly during exercise. Really feeling them squeeze and release and squeeze and release. Muscle control in general is a very healthy thing. So that's it. While you have time now in quarantine, if you're bored, practice your breathing, make muscle not excuses, play safe, stay strong. Peace out.